We're going to be talking about NFTs and Metaverse. For this panel, we'll have four amazing people join us. We have Dylan from Figma, we have Roham from Dapper Labs, we have Marguerite from Neon District, and moderating this panel will be Drew Austin from Redbeard Ventures. And I'll welcome all of them here and have Drew sort of go into introducing all of our panelists and having them talk about who they are. So without further ado, let's welcome our amazing panel.
Hello. How are we doing, everybody?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Are we jumping right in? We're ready to go?
Yes, you are.
Either way. All right, let's go. Let's do it. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Drew Austin. I'm managing partner over at Redbeard Ventures. And just a really brief, we'll do a quick round of intros because I think everyone here has just got such an awesome story. And then we'll jump in and start talking metaverse, NFTs, and see where it goes. So my background, I've been a founder 15 years in different frontier technology companies, and over the last 12 months started up a venture capital syndicate called Redbeard Ventures. Have been very active in the blockchain, metaverse, NFT space. Investing in two of the companies up here with Dapper and Marguerite's company as well. We've invested in a variety of different metaverses, from Wilder World to Super World to Sandbox, and art marketplaces like Super Rare, and gaming companies like Zed Run. So we're really active in the space. We're really excited about investing in these in ecosystems like the Flow ecosystem and some of the companies that are building on top of Flow. And I'm personally, I'm an active investor in NFTs themselves. I'm the top 50 portfolio holder on Top Shot. I have a big stable on Zed Run, and a lot of Sandbox land that we develop. And then recently we just released our own NFT project called Knights of Degen, which is a really cool project I did with a great team of people. And we're having a blast, man, just learning and building and creating and investing and just meeting great people. So that's been my story. Marguerite, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Absolutely. Thanks, Drew. So Garrett D Corcell, I'm CEO of Blockade Games. We're building Neon District, which is a cyberpunk RPG. We have dynamic NFTs that evolve through the gameplay. I've been in this space, so Blockade has been around for about 4 years now. I've been in creative technology and in the crypto space specifically since 2014. Was one of the first artists in this space, so I've gotten to be here and see the entire space evolve as we've been exploring what's possible for creatives with blockchain technology. So of course, I'm having a blast watching all the possibilities and iterations on NFTs and where we are today. Everything from like loot, and seeing like people explore the different gamification tactics, plus just fine art in general, watching Sotheby's and Christie's take off and get around behind NFTs this year. It's been a blast. So anyways, I'm very passionate about the intersection of the metaverse, gaming, fine art, and yeah.
Awesome. Dylan, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm good to see y'all. My name is Dylan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Figma, and we are a design platform. So trying to make it so you can do everything from whiteboard and brainstorm all the way to design UI and UX to get that code into production. And my interest in NFTs started really with the CryptoPunks launch. Started to track it then. Was real lucky to kind of be on the earlier side there. And then with OpenSea, was thankful to be a seed investor and have tried to be supportive and active in the ecosystem since. And it's been amazing to watch this past 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, whatever, I don't know what time is, and to see what's happening in the world of NFTs. I think it's just an absolutely fascinating primitive that we're going to see be explored in so many different ways. And I think even on this call, we've got a few different ways that it's being explored that we can talk about. I remember actually at ETH Denver when Neon District launched from the hackathon project, and I was like, that's fucking cool, And so it's just awesome to think about, like, at this event, what will be the projects that'll be like the next Neon District, or actually I remember when my wife, then girlfriend, was at ETH Waterloo and she's like, man, I just saw this really cool thing. It's called CryptoKitties. So there's been so many amazing projects that have come out of the ETH global ecosystem, and I can't wait to see what's going to come out of this one.
It's awesome. Ro.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. My name is Roham Gharegozlou, co-founder and CEO of Dapper Labs. We've been big believers in the NFT space for a while. Authored the original ERC 721 standard on Ethereum, built CryptoKitties. Most recently focused on NBA Top Shot and taking the NFTs to the sports world. And you might have seen we announced the La Liga partnership a couple days ago, another big one coming next week. And we're also the original developers behind the Flow blockchain, which at this point has several thousand developers and Fortune 500 companies building on top of it. But I have a very soft spot in my heart for ETH global events, exactly because of what Dylan mentioned. I don't think CryptoKitties would have happened if it wasn't for ETH global and just bringing the community together, giving, we put little pictures of cats on Pokemon cards, and it was sort of the first time, it's like, hey, cats can be collectible too, and it's sort of getting that kind of energy to kick off the project was super critical. So really excited to be here and to talk NFTs. I think we're absolutely at the start of this journey, and so everyone here is right place, right time. 4 years ago, maybe we were a little bit
early.
We had to grind a little bit, but I think the next 4 years is going to be super fast.
All right, awesome. So let's start a little bit. I think it's really interesting. We have so many different approaches. I think there are some things like, it was kind of, it's obvious when you think of blockchain and NFTs that like gaming has a place for it. Sports cards have a place for it. Like you could get art has a place for it. Does anyone find it interesting? And what are your thoughts on this PFP movement, the profile picture movement? Like, I think it is fascinating to me that of all the things that like really would have struck a chord with people, that these PFP concepts and communities really took off. And I'm curious your thoughts. Like, I mean, Marguerite, you've been in this space for so long and you've been involved in some of the, like, I would say some of the more like complex, but also powerful concepts behind NFTs. This is kind of simple in a way, but powerful in itself. So, what are your thoughts on it?
What I think is really interesting about that is it is like the most tangible. Like, I feel like when we think about the beginning of NFTs and how people can understand what they are, like the fact you can have these generative experiences of creating these images, there's really no, like, in a lot of cases, there's not a real formula that's like a gamified formula to them. They're just like, here's this drop. And then we've generated all these, like, and then there's just rarities assigned to the different versions that are created, which I think back to CryptoKitties and how much more CryptoKitties was like way more sophisticated and conceptually with the, like how they had DNA and just the components. So I find it interesting that the complexity and what was interesting with as far as smart contract development around CryptoKitties as well is not being utilized in most cases with these PFP projects. It's really just the art, like it's like this visual understanding of the transfer, like this, we can transfer the images, and people are just excited about that. Like, it's just like, they're really excited about the most simple part of the entire like world of what we're developing around NFTs. And actually, Dylan with ETHmoji, like I have an ETHmoji. ETHmoji was one of the first PFP sort of like projects where you have an avatar. And actually, I believe you worked alongside the OpenSea founding team prior to OpenSea on ETHmoji. And so like, you had this it's a composable avatar essentially. And how come, like, and it's user driven, so you can build them. And like, when are we going to get from people from this phase of being given these generative pieces to where they get more excited about having hands-on, like building as far as the outcome? I think like everyone's learning that a limited distribution of 10,000 assets only for the function of like this idea of creating rarity, but then we're like paywalling out any continued distribution of that model doesn't really work. And I think everyone that's building games, like Roham knows, I know you know this, the real trick is to have a super wide distribution and then introduce rarity in a way that's protected by a game design that can build the ecosystem. So anyways, I think that it's great that people are exploring art and they're experimenting with crossover of community and intersections and interests. But I do think everyone's learning very gradually that like you see people in real time asking like, oh, this is a problem and how do we solve it? And so people are walking through this path together and they're all walking towards gaming. They just haven't realized it yet. So we're all like, so we've all been here, for 4 years building this. And so we're just waiting.
And so like the funny thing is for me, so I bought my first collectibles, my first NFT ever was well, maybe it was a CryptoKitty, but the one I really remember was Super Rare's art for some reason. That's what really like completely transformed my perspective. I think it was the end of 2018, and I bought some art on Super Rare, and I was just like, that was it for me. I was hooked because the concept made so much sense. Now I preached art, I preached crypto to a lot of my non-crypto friends, and no one came near crypto until Top Shot, because that was what got my social circle to finally have text groups that they actually were active in, where we were talking about crypto and NFTs every day. So like, Roham, what are your thoughts on this? Like on Top Shot's role in bringing these new people into the NFT community, and then seeing them migrate to PFPs, and how that's going to translate into further, the further evolution of the space. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Look, I mean, I think the profile picture, I have a Bored Ape, I think I'm a supporter of all of these projects, but I think they're still pretty small. They're much more status games for the ultra wealthy than they are, anything that can sort of directly translate to millions or hundreds of millions of people. And then, if you look at even, art, like Art Blocks has about 20,000, 19,000 total owners. The only projects that sort of get close to breaking double digits, triple digits, are Zed, Axie, and Top Shot, and it's because they have that funnel that Marguerite's talking about, where you can kind of get started with, without a huge investment, and you can do stuff. You can get into habits in a sense, and I think that the profile pictures are today kind of an amazing sort of an experience for the wealthy, and I think that's been in particular the Bored Ape Yacht Club has pulled it off really well, where they're creating so much community value out of the assets, but they're also a hint towards what's going to be coming. I'm sure some of the folks here heard that Twitter is putting in authentication for NFT ownership. You can kind of say, hey, this is my avatar. And to Marguerite's point, I think what the masses will want is more customization, is more just interactivity with their product, maybe earning things for their avatar as things grow. And that's a big reason why we've been really big fans of Genies, and leaned in with the Genies team, because we think they're taking kind of a Gen Z first approach to saying, well, if we're all going to live in digital worlds and we need digital identities, how do most people want those digital identities to work? Now, ultra wealthy, for sure, they want you want the Picasso on your wall, right? But not that many people can afford that, and so there's sort of a how do we bridge from here to there, is going to be really an interesting exercise.
Totally. And so Dylan, like I think it's always funny, and you're like, you're very much involved in creative and art, and this stuff is like in your world. Like, I sometimes find it funny how like my friends now talk about art, and it's kind of like, it's almost like to the point where like we're at a bus stop, they see an ad, oh, look at the art on that bus stop. Like, it's like, anything is now art. Art has become like art. It's really getting it's really interesting now, people's definition of art. Like, oh, did you see the art on that camel? It's like, oh God. But so what is your thoughts on how this is, like, what this is doing for the art world as well, and the creative world? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, it's a great thing. I mean, I think, and obviously I'm highly biased in the answer. I mean, I'm really, a significant portion of my net worth is in NFTs. But I think the question of what is art usually drives art forward. And regardless of whether we see NFT art markets crash when a crypto cycle comes, I wouldn't be surprised, right? Sometime in the next 2 years, maybe sooner, quite a bit sooner, we'll probably see a crypto crash. Crypto is a cyclic asset. It's not going to be up and up forever, despite the mania that we're all in right now. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't have significance. I think there's great significance here. And I think that you have to basically separate the significance of sort of the conceptual from the actual monetary value that's changing hands. And that's kind of why I think that the term collector is sometimes overused, because there's a lot of speculators in the space. That's okay. Speculators are sort of like creating liquidity pools for people to be able to buy this artwork and be able to invest in artists. But I think if you zoom out to just some of the macro trends that are going on, we're going from a physical economy to a digital economy. In that digital economy, people want digital goods because they're living online, right? And I think that as we are navigating the digital economy, whether it's a profile picture, I've thought that several times, oh man, profile picture projects are dead. And then I'm always reminded of sort of like the patent office, in the early 1900s, 1800s, whatever it was. And they're like, oh yeah, not sure any more patents will exist after some time. We should probably just shut it down. And it's like, then you see projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club, or you see projects like the Noun Project, where you've got actually this incredible group of people coming together to be able to buy a noun every single day, contribute the funds to a DAO, and have that DAO then be able to vote on what they should do. Their first act actually being charitable contribution, which I thought was incredible. And so I think that every time we think that we see the limits of some type of the medium, we're going to see further innovation, because we've created this honeypot for the world's creatives, and they've come to it, and they've realized that there's actually some money there as well, and that for some of them, they can actually subsist off that. And from there, that unblocks their creativity. Mm-hmm. And I think that, Loot is another great example of that. I'm obsessed with it, have been obsessed since it launched. It's such an exciting project to me, because here's an example of, rather than having a franchise like sports or a created universe like Neon District, which are both amazing, right? But instead it's like, let's go world build together. Let's go figure out how, as a community, we can create a new world, which I think really gets the definition of metaverse. No one really knows what metaverse means. It's this collection of loose terms right now. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with decentralization. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with like the yes and principle of improv. I'm pretty sure it has to do with like building on each other's works and derivative projects. And Loot to me is right at the center of all those things. And so I get very excited about that project and just see what comes from it.
So that's awesome. So next driver of growth, so I guess my theory, if I think about the thesis here, it's like I saw, we were in the speculation phase with crypto from like 2013 to 18. Then there was the ICO bubble that crashed. The winter hit, shit companies died, good companies built, and out came DeFi. And I think DeFi brought utility and an entirely new wave of value to the tokens that were able to sustain that winter, were well funded with great teams, and be able to then rise above and now have a phenomenal utility of kind of rebuilding the financial infrastructure from the ground up. In my perspective, and Marguerite, you might even say this was farther back, but like I feel like we've been in the NFT space since 2018. That's just my view. Maybe it's like 2017 or even 16, and it's been a speculation phase as well. Like people speculating, buying, selling. It's the foundational principles are we like to buy dope shit, and we want to make money while we do it. And like that's kind of a lot of the
I actually kind of disagree with that. I think that there are, I think it's important that people know there's a corner of the internet that's like long-term collectors that believe that there's a canon being created of NFT art. And that art, like for example, I'm a member of Fingerprints DAO, which takes the thesis of, they're the sort of on-chain art that is going to be the sort of native art form for NFTs and blockchain, and their entire philosophy. Sorry?
Which one was that you said?
Fingerprints DAO, and their philosophy is this is what I started to get really involved. I asked the creator, he had bought an autoglyph that I wanted. And I said, hey, can I buy that off of you guys? And he said, sorry, our entire point of view and philosophy. And I was like, sign me up. I want to be as involved in this DAO as possible, because that was exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I do want to just correct that, because I think that not everyone is a speculator in the space.
Sure. Okay. So that's totally fair. I would say, I guess from my perspective, the broad audience, and if you think about most of the buzz and conversation has a lot to do with speculation. There are people that are deeper, absolutely. But I think the most driver of use around NFTs in the short term, in the near term, at least from what I've seen with my networks of people that weren't even crypto people that are now entering the space, is speculation of price and speculation of value and speculation of long-term or short-term value. But then, like, I guess my point being here is that then we go through this speculation phase just like we did with crypto. There will be a winter eventually at some point, and out of that, I think you come to the metaverse, which is the true native, whereas the native home for these assets. Okay, but in between that, I think the metaverse is still a ways away, like true ways away. what do you think are the nearest term next innovative drivers of adoption of NFTs? Marguerite, it looks like you're.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw this at Dylan. I really believe that there's two spectrum, like this, when we think about the spectrum of innovation and what you're saying, why we might experience winters, because there's a lot to be built still. And on one end, we're going to be exploring interactive NFTs and what infrastructure and framework we'll want for that across all the different applications. You know, what we're going to need from our marketplaces to support that across the different applications. To the other side is a no-code remixing platforms, which I think Dylan is completely positioned to just knock it out of the park. Everything from his proof of concept with Emoji to like now his platform with Figma. Like, so I want to know when are we going to have a no-code remixing platform, Dylan?
Well, I don't know what that, but in terms of when that will be, but I'm certainly not building it right now. But I love the idea of remixing, and I think actually some examples of that recently, just to call out some projects that I think are really cool here. One that I saw was Deaf Beef, and Deaf Beef has a series of projects, and they're basically audiovisual experiments in the blockchain. They have the C code to render the projects in the smart contract, and then they have a series of different artwork. One of them, series 3, is called Entropy, and for Entropy, whenever it's transferred, the artwork changes and degrades. Kind of like if you have a record vinyl, the more you play it, the more scratchy it gets. It's a similar sort of fashion.
That's cool.
Another one that I thought was really interesting was Blitnots and Blitmaps. And so Blitmaps, basically you had this entire process they used to basically mint on-chain the artwork itself. You could do things like compose and translate the color palettes as well as to draw. And then from there, you could buy the Blitmaps if you had missed that phase and actually mint what's called a Blitnot, which is sort of the next character in their created universe, also partially on chain. And I think that was also really interesting as a derivative work. The third that I'll point out is kind of similar to both ideas, which is this project that not many people have seen yet called Animal Coloring Book, which is an example of basically you discover the properties of the NFT as you are then minting it and then transferring it. So every time it transfers, it's an additive thing, sort of the opposite of the series 3, Deaf Beef example. It's, you like have a NFT called cat, and I have some outline of a cat, and then I transfer it over to you, Marguerite, and you get, the outline of the face, and then you transfer it to Roham, and he's got the eyes, and you transfer it to Drew, and the eyes are kind of like googly eyes. And it's just really neat because you kind of discover the NFT as it's transferred. And I think one thing that is going to also be really important for NFTs is zero knowledge proofs. I think if you think about remixability, composability, and also just gameplay, if you are playing World of Warcraft and you have your bag of items, it's really important that people don't know exactly like what's in your bag. And zero knowledge proofs, I think you could actually use them in the future. I'm not saying that we all have figured out exactly how to do this today, but one day we're going to have a world where people can play these games and have items that others do not know they have. And I think that'll be just as important as the status games that people are playing on Twitter today with profile pictures.
Ron, what do you think? What do you think are going to be? That's awesome. What do you think are going to be the next major near-term drivers of unique adoption?
Well, I think you're seeing it kind of across the board. And I just want to say, it's true that crypto is cyclical and will go through up and down markets, and especially NFTs that rely on a lot of speculative energy will be affected. Gaming historically does really well in sort of recessions of all kinds. Entertainment is something people need through thick and thin. And we launched Top Shot during a time when nobody cared what NFTs were. And people came to it. Admittedly, there was an excitement about trading cards. Basketball games weren't happening, and so it just kind of tapped into a zeitgeist in a particular way, even back then. But it wasn't related to sort of crypto in particular, specifically, nor kind of the markets more generally. And so I think, especially when we go through sort of that cycle, you'll see NFT projects that are much more about the communities they're serving and much less about tapping into a sort of stream of, a speculative energy in a way to kind of market make and get into, as Dylan was saying, sort of And I think that that'll be good. That'll be good. It'll be a good chance for people to get in at the ground floor. I think that gaming is the sort of driver of, adoption for sort of millions of people. Other than, what I think what we're doing in sports is something that, Top Shot itself can go from 1 million users to 1 billion users. We're NBA fans. We're expanding to 3-4 billion sports fans with soccer, et cetera. But kind of seeing what, let's say, projects like Chain Monsters are doing, where they're taking simplified gameplay from things like Pokemon, but giving true ownership, giving trading, creating meta economies around it. That's going to be exciting for people through thick and thin. And then on the flip side is sort of music. I think it was Chris Dixon that said music is the industry where the biggest gap between sort of what the customer wants and even sort of what the artist is able to do or able to monetize, because there's so many kind of middlemen, there's so many established interests, there's so many kind of red tape in between, and whether it's sort of projects like sort of Record Shop or Audius or others, I think there's so much opportunity in kind of bringing fans closer to the people they care about. And so those are sort of three spaces. So sports, gaming, music are kind of what I get really excited about.
Totally. And I think it's interesting that, like, I think most people I speak to are incredibly excited about play to earn and the play to earn concept and great gaming. And I still think we're so early in that area. Like I look at Axie Infinity and it's kind of an odd game to be the game that's like the face of play to earn in my opinion. But like, I actually think there's a step before that, which is own to earn. So there's like own to earn, and then I think that we get to play to earn. And I think the own to earn is kind of what we're seeing, where DeFi is kind of leaning into the NFT space. And by having certain types of assets, you can, like, I think music could be the perfect home for the own to earn economy, which is, a lot of people are now talking about, are you going to get royalties by owning a piece of an NFT that when music is played, you get a percentage of those royalties? What are you guys' thoughts on that before we move into play to earn?
I think it's super exciting. I mean, the idea of NFTs as a productive asset, which is also part of Marguerite's reference to ETHmoji. Sorry, Drew.
I said it creates freedom for people to have those passive income streams is so important.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was also partially the idea of ETHmoji, was the base layers that you could have, or even just the things you built on top of that. If you made a derivative work, then you would get some income off of the new mint. But yeah, I think that that's an very exciting idea. And also just the idea of having some way to have the rights to an artist that you really like. It actually will bootstrap new artists in the ecosystem, because basically you're betting on, then you're saying, okay, let me go discover indie artists, find the ones that I think I'm going to take off, that are going to take off, get rights to some of their music, or fractionalized rights to some of their music, of course. And then from there, that will actually create income for me if I'm right. And so it enables this sort of class of people that are these super fans of what's next in the music world, to actually monetize their passion. And I think that could become really, really big, really fast. Yeah. I also think that just as long as we're talking about other categories of what could come with NFTs, it's just, I think we're all still trying to imagine what this metaverse concept can be and how this patchwork of decentralized systems will come together. And no one knows yet, but I think that there will be a world one day that more people are spending time online. We're already seeing that. We're already spending time online. We're just not doing it in a very interesting way. And so, I think that, when I grew up, I played Neopets, right? And that was like a huge part of my childhood. I think that, if you think about the fast forward of that to World of Warcraft, to other MMOs, to then, games like Dark Forest, which I think are way more interesting than Axie Infinity to me, because that's an example of a complex strategy game that basically incorporates NFTs as game items, is built in WebGL on a layer 2, using zero knowledge proofs in order to mine portions of the map that you can't see otherwise. Like, there's so much exploration that can happen here. It's only a matter of time before the first AAA game comes out with NFTs, but it's also just a matter of time before someone builds a virtual world that actual goods and services will be represented, and property will be represented as more NFTs. We're already seeing some of that, but I think we're going to see it at a different level soon. And I can't wait. I'm really excited for what that'll be.
So that's like making me want to go in a couple different directions, but I'm going to start here first. Well, one, let's talk play to earn for a quick second, because I think there's, before I get into the metaverse part of this, which I really want to get to, what are your thoughts on the future of work when we think about play to earn? Like, how does it impact the future of work? Because I have some weird philosophical thoughts on what could happen to society if this takes off the way it could. Marguerite, what are your thoughts on how play to I also come from an HR tech. I just sold an HR tech company. So I think of, when they think of play to work, they think of digital transformation. I'm sitting here thinking dude, we're all gonna be working in the metaverse. That's the future of work. But what is your thoughts on the play to earn and future of work kind of situation?
Yeah, so I think that the challenge that we're facing right now with building out these experiences is play to earn is really bottable unless it is protected by a very strong game design. And so even in DeFi and even Dark Forest, it's really a game of who can build the best bot, which is a game, sure. But is that fun for the person that's just trying to participate and walk in and it's a normal casual player? No, that's not fun, right? So how do we build out experiences online that can engage an abstract human puzzle solving part of our capacity that is different and is not bottable? And that actually is pretty complicated to build those kinds of game designs. So I think that the space is currently exploring what has worked for the gaming industry and for a lot of these problems and protecting economies. And we're trying to adopt them also with our blockchain game economies. So with the play to earn model, honestly, games and the likelihood of games failing is gigantic. And that's why it's really hard for investors to invest in gaming all by themselves. Now we've done this brilliant idea of adding blockchain applications, which are also very likely to fail, that have never been built before, with games that are also innovative and very likely to fail. And everyone's just going to try to figure out what formulas are working. So that's why I think it's totally okay that people like Loot, we're starting very small at a proof of concept. We're finding the most fundamentally sticky thing about the experience. And then I believe we're going to see projects that are successful from there get funding because they've proven a sticky formula, and they're going to be able to go build a whole concept and game universe around those experiences. So I do feel right now to iterative building, build fast and fail hard, it should be everybody's, especially if you're just an engineer and you're just trying to get a proof of concept off the ground. But I don't think it's the right move to go do something crazy ambitious, build your own blockchain ecosystem simultaneous with building a whole new AAA game studio, even if you have industry experience on one of those fronts. Roham. I remember when Roham launched Flow and I was are you sure that that's a good idea? So anyways, I'm really excited about seeing all these little projects get off the ground because there's so much potential in various ways of, so it's great seeing things like Loot and these other projects being incredibly successful, and you can see that there's something magical there in the community to get behind it.
All right, so before I move on to my next question, I have to let Roham respond to being called crazy. Roham, Roham, is it crazy to have to building your own blockchain while you're building a game studio, while you're building games and IP and all this other stuff?
Oh, yeah, it was nuts, and we almost weren't able to do it. And don't forget, we also had to build the payment rails, right? Dapper Wallet today is still the best user experience for crypto payments, and we process over $1 billion there, and it's fully compliant, fully sort of a regulatory, very kind of well-lit experience, the kind of thing that the NBA and global brands want to use. That's why Genies is plugging into Dapper on Flow, because they're going to be bringing the billions of fans of their partners and their artists and all those things. And what are those folks going to do? Go download MetaMask? It's just not going to work. Have to acquire cryptocurrency, just not going to work. And then when it comes to Flow, when you're looking at Ethereum, you're looking at L2s, there's and then other blockchains. There are security trade-offs moving off of ETH mainnet, but ETH mainnet is too expensive for most things. And so when Shopify was looking for a blockchain for Shopify partners to be able to mint NFTs, they chose Flow. And when other Fortune 500s are looking at the kind of network that can support not just the scale or at the cost, but also the user experience, the customer trust, we choose Flow. Flow's got 2 million active wallets right now, 1 million of those verified unique users from Dapper, 1 million of those across the other sort of non-custodial ecosystems, those are normal people. They're not, they're coming to play Chain Monsters and play NBA Top Shot and use Record Shop and all these things. They're not coming to, we don't really have yet the kind of DeFi ecosystem that would bring kind of the traders and the speculators, even though that's possible. So was it crazy? Absolutely, but no question we made the right call, because and now I'm looking at what's happening. Gas wars on Ethereum. We're looking at smart contract. We built our own programming language. Cadence was built from the ground up for not just NFTs, but also the kind of smart contracts we need, the more complex kinds of smart contracts that A, we had to write 4 years ago for CryptoKitties, but B, when you come into DAOs, when you come into composable games, it's every single step, has to be thought of. So, we didn't do it lightly, right? Like I spoke to Vitalik multiple times. We went through every other layer one architect and from sort of, and then we spoke to some of the layer 2 teams, although back then it was.
Roham, did you ever consider building a layer 2 as opposed to building like a version of like a Matic for your own instead of that?
We always figured, look, like we weren't interested in saying, let's build a Band-Aid solution. We're interested in saying 10 years from now, who's building the right trade-off space for consumer apps? And no one was, and no one is, right? Like the paths people are taking are either splitting things into layer 2s, going down the road of sharding, reducing decentralization, all of this stuff. And flow today isn't everything it'll be in 5-10 years, but we're very confident it's the right trade-off space. Nobody was thinking, oh, we need to write our own smart contract language. Everybody's thinking, oh, let's use Rust. That's a great idea. Or Solidity is fine. It's been around for 4 years. We just disagree. Nobody was thinking of rethinking Web3 or saying, well, why not have MetaMask, et cetera, and then just use centralized wallets when you need it. We disagree. We think you need a wallet application interface that lets users lets users take custody of that same wallet, right? Cycle keys through it. And it's all of these like bits and pieces where we couldn't convince anybody to sort of adopt our approach. And we didn't want to just build a appendage to someone else's network. We think that this is the right trade-off space and someone's going to eventually figure it out. And so we said, well, might as well build it ourselves, launch it with the NBA, bring on board, and then open the gates, right? Let anybody build on top, let anybody host nodes. And that's the path it's going down.
We just want to add one thing. I'll keep it really short. I think both Roham and Marguerite are correct in different ways here. So Marguerite one of her points was you need to, if you want to be a successful gaming company, you need to launch a lot of things, do it really fast, test your concepts and iterate on them. I think it's absolutely true. Games are a hit business. Roham's point was that usability matters. You got to do whatever you can to get usability to work, even if it means doing the crazy things. And I think that we do need more people that are going to do really hard long-term projects in this ecosystem. Dark Forest, for example, is one of those. Like, I was really impressed with them because they integrated a wallet into the gameplay on top of a layer 2, right? And they went and did a lot of UX improvements because they also said, MetaMask, like no one's going to use it. And that's not the way that the future of gaming is going to look. And so we're just in this stage. And I also from Figma have that bias, it took 5 years from starting Figma to making our first dime from a customer, right? And so it's just like these things take time. And I think that, if you're working on gaming, maybe try to do these short sprints, but sign up for a long time period and know that it's not all going to work. And if you want to do like the large, big project, that's fucking awesome. Go do it, and find ways to fund it and use the community that's around you to support you and try to rally those resources.
Okay, so I know we don't have too much time, but I want to hit the metaverse stuff for a quick second. So my big question here, do you think the metaverse takes off? And when I say take off, and I know, so Dylan, you actually have like kind of opened up the definition of a metaverse in a bunch of directions, but in I guess at least the vision in my head, do you think the metaverse takes off pre-VR, or do we need VR?
I think it already has.
Okay, fair.
Look at Roblox. Roblox is the metaverse.
Okay, so that was my, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this.
It might not be a metaverse that we like in terms of it being decentralized. It might not be a metaverse that we like in terms of like, it's a lot of kids using it. It's not like a lot of adults using it, but like I bet a lot of kids really want Roblox instead of dollars right now.
Yeah. So your thought, your approach is I guess like, do you think that VR is even needed for the metaverse to thrive?
I think that it's VR, AR are technologies that are coming, and over our lifespans, they'll be just as important as mobile devices or screens.
Mhm.
When exactly, I cannot tell you, but I think they will become that. And I think that people are already living online, and I think that the fidelity at which they experience these metaverses will go up.
Yeah, I guess because that, when I think about this, it's like if we're buying assets for a digital world, we're spending more and more time in a digital world. The theory that I have is that eventually our digital world needs to become more immersive to facilitate a truly kind of almost human-esque like experience. Marguerite, what is your perspective? Do you think VR is going to play a big role in gaming and in the driving of adoption of NFTs? And do we have to just wait till Apple decides to throw their hat in the ring? Like, what's your thoughts here?
No, I think like the open metaverse is going to win. And I think that I think users love collaborating and building and having the tools to participate. And you can't do that and have that same ownership experience in a walled garden. Like no one wants to go build Facebook's metaverse. Like no one's attracted to that. And I mean, maybe there's a certain user, but I can tell you the broader, like everyone that wants to build the communities doesn't want to go do like Facebook's work for them. And so like, I think that already, like a little bit what Dylan said, is we're already here. I think that the little experimentation and the collaborative building, I think that is the beginnings of the metaverse. I don't know that there's going to be a definitive moment. I think there's just going to be intersections of projects that emerge and like they just continue stacking on top of each other. And then people are going to work on those tech stacks to make different experiences possible. And then people are going to have APIs that connect. I think first of that is OpenSea. I think OpenSea is the hub of the metaverse right now. I think the game is inventory management. Yep. And that's the bottom of the funnel at the moment. And instead of like everyone focusing there and you're talking about speculation, like for example, Neon District, we have 130,000 asset owners now. And it's a free to play game. So people can onboard, and with that wide distribution, since it's free and you can just walk right into the game, and then we introduce scarcity and people can use their accumulation of the in-game currency Neon, which is not a token, it's just, like WoW Gold, to buy and participate and compete for these rare assets. That is like, for me, we're creating our own universe. There's definitely an emphasis on creating our universe, but it's a particular intersection. And I have no doubt there's going to be overlapping like Venn diagrams of where Neon Districts and our user base like participates in other communities. But I do think like giving our users tools to help build out side quests, help build out side stories, have a Star Wars type universe where we drive major narrative experiences, properties, create the core economic value, but give the opportunity and the bridges for other side economies to be building off of, is going to be like, that model for me is basically a microcosm of what I think will be the macro of the metaverse. And I think we are already building the tools and the assets that will be a part of it.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to Marguerite's points, she reminded me of, is just how important distribution is. It's a really boring topic when we're talking about the future, but just if you're building a game, you need to use distribution. And that's a huge channel for you. And so I think like that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about things like Loot, is because it creates an inherent distribution channel, which is all the holders of Loot, especially as that ecosystem gets built up and people know where to look. When I think about the open metaverse, I think one of the challenges that we have to solve to make it work, which I also heavily subscribe to, like Marguerite, I really want that to happen versus like having some evil monopolist overlord, which is basically every other metaverse fiction. They all have one. And I think what's important is how do we create distribution for people that are creating projects in this open metaverse?
Very cool. Okay, so we only have 3 minutes left. So I'm going to ask a quick question for each person real quick. Name a project that you're excited about right now, an NFT project. Everyone's got their own little fun projects they're excited about. I'll drop one that I think is pretty cool because you guys just mentioned Loot. There's a project a buddy of mine is involved in building called GeoHashes. And I think GeoHashes is super interesting because it's also another derivative project, but they built this derivative project over Google Earth. So anyone that needs to use mapping and locations and proximity, they created this whole really interesting model around like a geohash encodes a geographic location into like a short string of letters and then you can, then you can do whatever you want with that building block. So I thought that was like in the spirit of Loot. I think we're going to see other building blocks like that are going to come out. And now I'm really excited to see what games and what ways people utilize this stuff. So that was one that I just thought was worth calling out. Dylan, tell me one that you're excited about.
Well, I've already talked a lot about Loot, Death Beef, others.
Sorry, Dylan, Death Beef, is it DEAF?
Yeah, DEAFBEEF. I think that's just the potential of on-chain media there is really exciting. What I'll talk about instead is just sort of what I'm calling the NFT chain rule, which is basically that a meme's value is proportional to the number of derivatives that are made off of it. And so I think like as you're looking at projects, so this is a meta answer, but as you're looking at projects, I think that the projects that will have the most value are the ones that will ultimately spawn derivatives. And I think that that's one thing to keep in mind as you're looking at different projects.
Do you think the derivatives have value? There's a huge debate about that.
No, I think that actually the derivatives create value.
I know.
For the thing that they create derivatives on.
I agree with that part. The question is, do you think the derivatives that are created are also valuable?
If they also have derivatives.
That's well played. Well played. Marguerite, what do you got?
Yeah, so actually I'm launching a new interactive NFT in a collaboration with Tim King. He's also known as Illustrator. And we made an interactive NFT it's with beat mixing, taking stems of a famous artist that we were working with for a major brand for a big drop. It's one of their first like this big brand's first drops. Mm-hmm. And anyways, it's a game also. So as you remix the stems according to how it's supposed to be produced, there's little, of course, with me making crypto puzzles, naturally there's like a crypto puzzle type game, a whole the remixing. But the fact you can even do this from OpenSea's asset page directly with iframe support. And I'm excited about this because of a couple things. One, interactive NFTs and gaming directly from asset pages. But then two, the fact that with music and stems, I believe like this is a proof of concept. Imagine you could have an entire library of stems in which people could use for remixing purposes to create new content and new interactive NFTs for different experiences. You can have live streams of DJing and like having audio, like the visualizers that match. And so you could have these NFTs that are showing you've got a DJ streaming or a radio station that's playing. There's so much to play with. So I'm excited because that's kind of like a side project I've been working on, and it's dropping in about 2 weeks.
Very cool. Very cool. Roman, what's exciting? Roham, what's exciting for you?
I already mentioned Chain Monsters. They just did $1 million drop last week, which went really well. Chain Monsters. Yeah, that's the sort of Pokemon derivative of it. And people are starting to kind of think about, well, what does it mean to build on top of these things? The Dr. Seuss app just went into testing, and that's cool because it's mobile first. And it's also trading first, so it's less about flipping for high dollar amounts, more about trading and completing sets and then this sort of thing. So y'all should sign up for that. And then as an art platform, I really like Versus, and all of these are on Flow. Versus is sort of totally on chain. The actual site itself is also serverless, and it's a really neat setup because it kind of pits the big whale against the community, and it says, well, will the thing become a one of one, or will it become more of an addition where multiple people can have access? So
that's interesting.
Those are some of the ones I'm playing around with today.
Awesome. And then where can we find you guys? What's Twitter handles real quick? Dylan?
At Zoink. Zoink. Zoink.
Roham?
I'm boring. I'm just Roham.
Marguerite?
I'm coin_artist.
Okay. And I'm Drew at Drew Austin, guys. This was a lot of fun. Kartik, thanks for having us. This was great.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thanks again for this amazing talk, and thank you so much for moderating, Drew. This has been great. Thanks again. See everybody.
Take care, everybody.